history. Don't know much biology. Don't know much about a science book.
Why do we value intelligence? This is a question I've been asking myself for a long time. Like most things that cause long-term damage, this question began in my childhood. Throughout much of my education, I was in environments where I was surrounded by highly intelligent and hardworking students. I went to 2 different academically driven secondary schools and floundered in both due to the pressure. I could never manage to motivate myself to achieve the grades necessary. Most of this I put down to my own immaturity and stubbornness, but is probably a bit more reflective of my own intellectual limitations. Which it is, I don't know, but sure, that's for someone smarter than I to decide. For college, I managed to somehow, still to this day beyond my understanding, get into Trinity College, a university known for being for the intellectually elite. And it was here that my distrust of intellectualism firmly took root. I just couldn't stand the majority of people I was with, all attempting to outdo each other with how many Nietzsche quotes they could shout the loudest. I began to have a great disdain for the majority of people there. Whether this was a result of the personality of the individuals themselves, or because of my own insecurities about intelligence, is another thing that can be left for someone else to decide. I felt like so many people constantly wanted to let you know how intelligent they were, and were loath to ever admit that maybe their own intellectual abilities were, in fact, average. It was during my time in college, however, that I made friends with people outside of Trinity who had eschewed the formal education processes by either choice or having been unable to secure the academic achievements necessary. It was by changing the social circles that I'd been surrounded with all my life. I learnt more about kindness, open-mindedness, and life in general than any other academic institution or intelligent person could have taught me. I wondered why we had chased this quest to be intelligent, or at least be perceived to be intelligent. And how much was the perceived intelligence really going to be beneficial to people outside of the traditional academic institutions? In order to figure out why we all seek to be intelligent, or at least appear to be intelligent, I first had to understand what intelligence was and how we evaluate it. I decided to take 3 people I knew, all of whom had varying academic backgrounds and who were all successful in their own chosen careers. One participant was Niamh. Niamh scored highly in the Leaving Cert and went on to study medicine in Trinity and is now a GP. She wasn't one of the people I hated. Trina scored above average on the Leaving Cert, dropped out of college multiple times, eventually got a degree and a master's in drama and playwriting, and is now a successful playwright. And the other participant was Emma. She cheated in the Leaving Cert, didn't go to university but achieved various diplomas in fashion and art, and is now a successful costume designer. But back to me. When I was 15 years old, I moved to the United States and finished out my secondary level education there. As such, I missed out on what is one of the most defining cultural moments in a young Irish person's life, the Leaving Cert. I was curious to see how the girls found the Leaving Cert, and in particular, how they feel it played into assessing intelligence and the relevance it had for their future. Here's Niamh talking about how much it truly plays into the future and the pressure young students are under.
And then, and it's so all-consuming, you know, at that stage in your life, and everybody's asking about it and how do you do, and it's this, you know, this kind of rite of passage in Irish life. And then now when you reflect on it, you just, and you see your friends who have taken such different paths, and people who, you know, were doing very well academically and then, you know, totally jumped ship or did something very different, or people who didn't particularly excel academically who are now really successful in their chosen field. And I think I just sort of want to tell the, you know, very stressed out 16, 17-year-olds who are about to do their Leaving Cert, like, it's going to be okay. This isn't, much as it feels like this is going to decide your life. It's not, and it's not a marker of how successful you're going to be, or even like a reasonable surrogate marker. Like, it's just a particular test, and I wish that you could tell 16 and 17-year-olds that, and that they would believe you, and that they would know that it's, in the real world, it's not all about this kind of academic ability.
Trina talks about how she did in the Leaving Cert and how it didn't matter to her.
I got 395, which for somebody who, and like, it drives me insane. Like, I'll talk to some of my friends and they're like, oh yeah, I did nothing and I got 515 points, and you're like, you did, and you're soup. Like, it's just like, there's no way you did nothing and you got 515 or whatever. Like, I did a bit, like, you know, I didn't do enough to do particularly well, but I did a bit, like, but again, like, it's funny when I think back to that year, and I suppose it's because I've always known what I wanted to do, and that was not available to me there was no college course that was like, oh yeah, well, here's your 3-year degree, here's an Oscar now at the end of it, there you go, you're sorted. There was never that kind of incentive for me to do it. Like, I feel sorry for my mum and my dad, because I think they were like really like, come on Katrina, please. I'd be like, no, shh, I'm reading, you know. Oh, to be honest, like, I wasn't even, like, literally, I decided to go to university a week before I went. Like, I wasn't going to go. I had this mad notion with a friend of mine that we were going to go write plays and perform on the streets of Ireland. Like, literally, that was the plan. And then it was so funny because we had this conversation, like, I think it was like 2 days after the Leaving Cert results came out. He's like, so I have to go to UCD. And I was like, yeah, me too. I was like, okay.
In fact, Niamh thinks that what matters most in life is your ability to work hard, and this is really what mattered for her career in medicine.
Sure, you need a certain academic ability to, you know, be able to get through medical school, but really when it comes to the real world, I think it's actually what you need is a hard work ethic, because it doesn't matter how clever you are when it's 3 a.m. and you've been working since 8 o'clock that morning and you're called to see a patient. It's actually, it doesn't matter how clever you are. It matters if you're prepared to work that hard and not go to bed and go see that patient.
Trina herself has had an example of someone who worked hard to get into medicine in their own particular way.
My mum knows this guy who was in school with my uncle, and he put all his energy in 5th and 6th year into learning how to cheat in the most efficient way. And that guy walked out with full marks and everything. Like, that's really smart.
Yeah.
That's really smart. He got into medicine, which is terrifying. Probably cheated his way through medical school as well. But, like, that's an intelligence that you've just, like, and in a way you've cheated the entire system, like.
This is something that Emma can definitely relate to.
I didn't care to get a huge amount of points because it wasn't what I needed in the end, and I'd see all these people stressing or not having any lives outside of school, being like, I have to go home and do 4 hours of study, and I'm like, I just did about 10 minutes on the train, and then that's grand. Do you know? So I didn't really bother too much with it. My mum made me go to grinds because in my mocks I'd failed physics and maybe Spanish, and then so I did grinds in both of those things. And then that was grand in the leaving, like I passed the Spanish and I passed the physics as well, but that's because I cheated. But I think that's smart. Like, I think how I cheated was the true mark of intelligence. So because of our school uniform, which was a dress or the pinafore or whatever, and you had the skirt, so I just wrote everything on my thighs. And so when you're there, like, writing your thing, you can just, like, hitch up your skirt, have a quick old read, and you know there's enough space on a thigh to get a good bit of information on it. And I just realised that no adult in that situation, man or woman, can ever go, like, lift up your skirt, I want to see your thighs. Like, they'll never be able to test whether it's there or not, whether they even see it. They can't prove it because nobody's going to do it. So I was like, well, this is the perfect crime.
So, I needed to evaluate their intelligence. This would be a problem. In order to do this, I would first have to figure out what I was defining as intelligence. While most people have an idea and a sense of what intelligence is, there's no agreement as to how you define it. Psychologists have debated this topic for a good while now and are yet to come up with a concrete definition. One definition that is commonly used in mainstream science is:
intelligence is a very general mental capability that, among other things, involves the ability to reason, plan, solve problems, think abstractly, comprehend complex ideas, learn quickly, and learn from experience. It is not merely book learning, a narrow academic skill, or test-taking smarts. Rather, it reflects a broader and deeper capability for comprehending our surroundings, catching on, making sense of things, or figuring out what to do.
In everyday life, we tend to think that someone is intelligent if they tend to know lots of facts and have a strong memory recall. But for psychologists, that doesn't mean you're good at thinking or understanding that stuff. There are stark differences between how psychologists define it and how ordinary people define it. The debate about intelligence has been going on for years now. At the turn of the 20th century, British psychologist Charles Spearman suggested that we have one comprehensive general intelligence that underlines all our specific mental abilities. He called it the G factor. This was developed because studies had found that people who do well on certain intelligence tests tend to do well on other intelligence tests. This finding is usually taken to be that there is some single underlying trait. But the G factor in itself is controversial because we don't know exactly what the tests are measuring, as intelligence is a fuzzy idea. All we can say is that there is a single one thing that we are all measuring, whatever that might be, whatever we want to call it. We call them intelligence tests because that's what we think they are measuring, but we don't actually know what they're measuring. They're merely trying. Psychologists argue about how you can believe the G factor is a thing, but can you say it's really intelligence, or is it something else? Maybe it's a combination of different cognitive abilities. Or maybe it's a combination of cognitive abilities and motivation. Maybe you don't think intelligence is the same thing as memory, and you think the G factor is measuring memory ability to some degree. It's basically a total shit show. In contrast to this idea of the G factor is Howard Gardner's idea of multiple intelligences that come in different forms. He references instances of brain damage where one ability may be destroyed while others stay perfectly intact. He argued that we have 8 intelligences, including musical, mathematical, linguistic, natural, interpersonal, intrapersonal, spatial, and body kinesthetic abilities. Gardner's theory is constantly being adjusted by other psychologists. This idea of multiple intelligences has helped teachers appreciate students for their multitude of talents. However, it is difficult to capture these different types of intelligences in a test. In particular, there are less tangible types of intelligence, such as creativity. Traditional intelligence tests can't test this, and we don't have a standardized system to measure it. On top of this, emotional intelligence is another aspect that we are not clearly able to examine. Many people believe that emotional intelligence is probably one of the most important types of intelligence there can be. Emma discussed with me in depth about the importance of emotional intelligence and interpersonal skills. Here she is telling me a story of how having those skills benefited her in school.
So for business, I had to do business. Didn't have to do it, I chose it, but I then realised, God, what had I done? Bookkeeping. But then the interpersonal skills kick in because I'm like, fuck, I've never done my homework. So then I have to cozy on up to my neighbour because we're sitting in alphabetical order. And I wouldn't normally necessarily hang out with you because we're just different types of people. But for now, you're my bestest friend and I really need that bookkeeping homework. Now, she's a surgeon now. Okay, and so that's fine. And I've spent my fair amount of time on the dole. But who's counting? Should have done that fucking bookkeeping homework.
In order to appreciate the varying abilities of my participants, I decided to perform a test that will categorise them with Howard Gardner's theory of intelligence. Niamh, who is a doctor, scored highly on interpersonal and logic skills. This would ring true as Niamh believes she got into medicine as she liked working with people.
So social, in brackets interpersonal, came up as the top one. Then the next one, so they say self-intrapersonal.
So you know yourself,
so
it's about knowing.
Yeah, cool. And then the next one, logic, math, came up as strong. And then, I think, I certainly know that the reason I love my job is because of people. And that's what, that's what I find professionally satisfying.
Trina, the playwright, scored highly on language and musical intelligence.
5 is the highest, so musical. 4.14 language. These all make perfect sense, really. You enjoy saying, hearing and seeing words. You like telling stories. You're motivated by books, records, dramas, opportunities for writing. Effective techniques of enhancing your learning using your language intelligence include reading aloud, especially plays and poetry.
And Emma, who loves all things nature, scored highly on natural intelligence. Those are fairly accurate.
Oh my God, spot on.
Yeah.
Like spot on. Love being outside. Like learning new stuff. I like being out in the garden, trying to redo my parents' garden at the moment. Teaching myself how to fix the stone walls, you know.
Yeah.
Learning about the mortar mix and all this kind of stuff, and then physically doing it, mixing it and then putting it up and all that. And learning what it's like in the different temperatures.
Does the Leaving Cert adequately examine people's intelligences? Should we be changing the education system to better cater towards students of different abilities? Those are questions that I think we all need to ask ourselves.
Don't know much biology.